All right, great. Um, well, uh, I guess for the sake of anyone watching, I'll copy the link. Um, but we have a bunch of Zygo PRs. Here's the first one. Um, yeah. So, well, I guess what do you have first thoughts already? Or, I mean,
Okay.
it's a,
Do I have first thoughts? So for all three of these PRs, the test pass, the changes look reasonable. The main concern I would have, if anything, would just be around whether or not the rules being proposed are robust enough.
right. So I guess with regards to the first one,
Mhm.
um, I'm reading through, there's a link Julia issue in the
Yep.
PR description. Um, yeah, I mean, okay, I guess this is a very long issue with lots of detailed comments, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to read it all on the call. Um,
Yeah,
but
I think it makes sense. The only question I would have is whether this function being used is internal or not. Does have a doc string, which is promising. And um it is there's an example of where it's used. So it's used, this is a dependency of another PR, I believe. Let's see. That would be my main concern. It makes sense, the motivation makes sense to me. Um I am not at all surprised that the broadcasting accumulation we do can be problematic if in the zero-dimensional case. So if this is mostly a non-functional change except for filling in the edge case, that works for me.
um, yeah, I mean, I guess the only reason we're using broadcasting here is as a shorthand way of defining a cum on arrays. But semantically, like going back to the Julia issue, there's a difference between adding versus broadcasting addition. Um, and in terms of the semantics of a cum, I would say that it should match the semantics of adding, not the semantics of broadcasting addition. So the fact that we do use broadcasting machinery to implement it um, shouldn't like leak out, is my thinking. So I think preserving zero dimension here semantically is the thing that I would do anyways. Um,
Mm.
the fact that it doesn't break any tests and everything is, I guess, good.
Yep.
So this gets our seal of approval. Um,
Yes, I would say so.
I'll just Okay. Next issue on the list.
So this one is where it gets a little more involved. This is a long-standing issue that's come up for a feature request where buffer never, the Zygo buffer type never got support for in-place broadcasting into it. I guess it is never implemented. I'm not sure why. This proposes a way to do that, and I'm just looking at the diff. My main comments on it were the tests at least look reasonable. At first, I was a little concerned about whether the test would properly capture the case where um, the function being broadcasted closes over or something, but the second test seems to do that with the generator expression or comprehension. And
Mhm.
then I would have to double check. Do we have a specific path for generators still in Zygo? I don't know.
Mhm.
No, it doesn't look like it. Only for collect. Okay, so that would have been the main concern, but it seems like this is mostly fine. So on the surface, it looks like this tests everything it should be. And then the changes would be cleanup. I don't know if you have any thoughts on if anything stands out to you, like this doesn't look right or this probably won't work or
Let's see. No, I think it's fine.
yeah, I'm surprised it doesn't take I'm surprised it's such a small diff, frankly. I thought there would have been 1.5 million edge cases, which is why I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something obvious here. But it seems like the map machinery is good enough. It even captures the broadcasted struct, surprisingly, which is not something I was expecting. I
I'm
have a
just
couple of, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, sorry. I was just saying that I'm just trying to look at what the tests currently cover.
Mhm.
But go on while I'm scrolling.
That's actually a good question. Can we look at the coverage for this PR?
Well, I meant more of um, what did the current buffer test for?
Hmm. Not a lot is my recollection there. The changes I was going to suggest before cleaning this up is that there's some uh, type piracy with a non-differentiable declaration that either we have to figure out why that's required or change it to use a zygote rule configuration, which is not a problem at all. And then I think there's like a couple of comments that need to be removed from the code, and maybe a couple
Right.
of anonymous functions need to be named, and that's it. But those are mostly those are very minor. It was mostly about whether the big things work or not.
Um, Hold on, reading the broadcasting spec. I mean, the only thing I can think of with the nothing thing is that if you're specializing broadcasting based on the destination that you're broadcasting to, then the source should be broadcast like the broadcasted type, but parameterized by nothing. So I wonder if the reason there's that non-differentiable bit is because under the hood, um, that copy to buffer broadcasted nothing is being used at some point in the broadcasting machinery.
I wouldn't be surprised, yeah. What is the nothing here? Is it the broadcast style?
Broadcasted is the lazy broadcasting, like the lazy broadcast object. Um, so I guess the part that I'm referring to is here. If you look in the tables, there's the table for bypassing default machinery,
Yeah. Hmm.
and then the third entry. So it's a thing on the right-hand side of the in-place
Oh, I see what you mean.
broadcast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
specializing on the destination type. Yeah.
right. Um, so at some point, a broadcast and nothing must get instantiated, and this copy
Hmm.
two must get called in order for the broadcast machinery to work. And I'm guessing that's where.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we hit that path. You would think it would have a style, but hmm.
So let's see.
I'm just looking through the chain rules broadcasting code to see if they have anything to say about this particular type constructor. Looks like they do not. Okay. Yeah, maybe one of those. It would be good to know why that non-differentiable is required at all. I noticed actually in the coverage, it doesn't. This could be an artifact of code but it doesn't actually seem to hit it. Um, so, I mean, there are a couple of possibilities. One is that the line information isn't being propagated properly, and the other one is that it's just not required. And if it's not required, we could just remove it. And if it is required, we should probably dig into why. Um, it may be something minor, but it would be good to know why, because having it, a gradient flow shouldn't be going backwards to that anyways, right? It gets a type that is already has no gradient because that type is a broadcast, or it gets a value that is a broadcast out, which should already have no gradient associated with it.
Sorry, say that last part again.
Like the broadcasted constructor th here, I think when it takes a nothing value in, that whatever value it takes in already has no gradient associated with it. So I don't know why you would have to mark it as non-differentiable. Um, like there might be a legitimate reason,
Hmm,
but if it doesn't come up, or if it like either there is a reason and the tests aren't showing it, or there isn't a reason and then we just don't need the non-differentiable macro call. Anyways,
right. Um, well, I guess then the thing to do is um okay, so we submit a review. We say this looks good. Okay. Outstanding points were remove extraneous comments, name anonymous functions, and then we can just ask if they can share what's the error when you remove the non-differentiable line.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Um, all right, last PR.
This one I marked as the trickiest because it's iterators and everything to do with iterators is just,
Horrible.
yeah,
Um,
precisely. Yeah, this one was a little hard to follow. I wasn't sure what I wasn't really comfortable with the original definition or how it worked, but this then is actually more complicated.
yeah, well, I'm assuming the rewrite, the reason it's rewritten the way that it's written is because of the comment about inferability.
Yeah, and the need to eh, um accommodate scalars as well, which it wasn't quite
Okay, well,
clear why
so,
how that works.
right, so one of your iterators is a number. Um,
Yeah,
so in that case, for the old one, for each of the iterators, um, where is this? Do you know off the top of your head what the definition of the underscore endims is?
I do not. I if I had to guess it,
Oh, I see it. It's a couple lines above.
there we go. Yeah. Okay. When did we get this? Might have been with the original PR.
Okay, right. I guess it's like getting the um Okay, so it basically is like if it's a multi-dimensional iterator, it'll give you the dimension. Otherwise, if it's unknown, we'll just assume it behaves like a one-dimensional thing.
Hmm.
That part's fine. I'm just trying to figure out where did scalars break down. Ah, okay, I see. So in the old definition, on the old line 297, there's like the reshape, and
Right.
I'm assuming in that case, the axes is, I don't know what axes does on a scalar, but I'm assuming it doesn't work.
It's an empty tuple apparently for a singular number. What if we do? And for a zero dimensional array, it's empty tuple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess it's for, well, both 296 and 297 look like the things where um the zero dimensional iterator case are being specially handled.
Hmm.
Those are the lines that changed. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's the original change relating to um sorry, the the scalar issue. And then the fact that basically everything's gotten lifted out of this n tuple um call into multiple calls, I'm assuming is to do with the inference issue. Because at least the first couple lines all look like they're doing what would be done inside the n tuple call anyways, just repeatedly iterating over the thing.
Hmm. I'm surprised the inferability would be better because there's this in the new version there's this dims vector, which I'm not still not quite sure why it needs to be a mutable vector instead of a tuple, but it's passed to map reduce conditionally. And then that should result in a type unstable output because the vector is variable length. So MapReduce doesn't know what the dimensionality of the output array would be. Unless it reduces to a single element, in which case maybe that's what I'm missing. That could be what I'm missing.
Well, it looks like the reason dims is mutable is so that you can append to it.
But right before the append, it empties it every time. So I wonder if it's just like some sort of scratch space. And maybe this could be
Oh,
done by creating a tuple instead.
um, yeah, well, I guess we think the reason for all of this is inferability, right? Certainly, if I look at the change and I try to identify what relates just to the scalar part of it, it doesn't seem like everything needs to be this drastic. Um, so but none
Yeah.
of the tests have any inferability checks.
Okay. So that's one thing we should probably flag then. I yeah, I would so if this was about inferability, I would have expected not to use a vector for dims because that destroys inferability when you give it to
Hmm.
MapReduce. Uh, so there, I have a feeling there's another reason for it. It's just not clear what that reason is because the original code uses n-tuple to create
Right.
dims. And I appreciate that the new one is more complex, I believe. CD plus FD plus. I guess it looks like it just skipped part of the range. Am I missing something there? It looks like it just it
Um,
the idea is to just take the same range as before, but remove some elements from it. Or sorry, it's not the same range as before, but like it'll change take from 1 to n dims of dy. But it'll from C dim and it plus 1 and remove it.
yeah, I mean, it looks like um, you have, it looks like between 1 through n dims of y, there's some amount of it that um, needs to be skipped over.
Yeah.
And let's see, if I is less than d,
Oh, I see one
d
reason
is what?
maybe
Yeah,
for the inferability too is that the D was would have been boxed before.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, the D is keeping track of where you are. That's being handled now by the CDIM um,
Hmm.
that's calculated. So, but I think the n tuple case and the append empty thing are both doing the same thing. One's just using a vector, the other's using a tuple.
Yeah.
In terms of inferability, I agree with you that the D is probably what caused the issue, but it seems like that's already taken care of by this whole CDIM
Hmm.
stuff. So feels like line 293 could again be a tuple.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
all right, so well, okay, and then there's this whole deal with the static getter
Yes. Which
that
was there
got lifted
before,
out.
to be fair. Um, why was it lifted out before? Might have also been to do with inferability, I'm not sure. I
Right,
mean, the way they construct it now, it's guaranteed that you'll get that the inference will work, whereas before it may not have been. Um, but the code is still doing the same thing.
right.
Yeah.
So
So
I guess, sorry, go ahead.
no, I just need to understand what this dims handling what's new with dims basically between this one and the last one. Like if it from your angle does it look like dims is the same between both, or do you think there have been some changes?
You mean functionally?
Yeah, into how like what dims will be between both versions. It's hard to tell for me
With
because the logic is so different.
okay, well, I think D at each iteration of the n tuple, like for every n in the
Hmm.
n tuple, I think D we agree should be um mapped to each element of CDIM.
Yep.
So iterating over CDIM is the same as what's happening to D as it's accumulating. Um, so in the n tuple case, so I guess in the append case, right? You could have dims going from one through n dims of dy,
Hmm.
um, and you're skipping over the region between CD and like there's a ND length chunk
Skip.
that you're
Yep.
skipping
Yep.
starting at CD, and CD is all the chunks that came before this current case.
Yes.
Um, in the n tuple version, you would be getting I every time until you hit D, which is the same as CD, so that part's
Hmm.
the same.
Yep.
Then when I is greater than CD, you get I plus ND, which is basically skipping over the entire chunk and going to the index, like going to the integer that's right after the chunk, which is CD plus ND plus one.
Hmm.
And then you keep counting up, but in the n tuple case, you stop ND integers earlier. So yeah, I think they end up giving you the same thing.
Okay.
Just one is a vector and the other is a tuple.
Yeah. It may be worth
Um,
digging into whether the tuple path as originally written was type stable. Maybe that's why they decided to go this route. But I feel like it should be possible to make a type stable if it isn't.
yeah, I mean, I just don't get how um I, I don't get how passing a vector to the dims argument of map reduces. I mean, surely that can't be it, where that's more type stable than passing in a tuple.
Yeah, that was my thought too.
So and if you call n dims on a tuple, what is base dot iterator size of a tuple?
Let me see. It's just a plain has length, so there is no dimension on the information. So I guess it would return one. Okay, yeah, because it's not a has or is has length a has shape? That's a good question. No, it is not. Okay.
Okay. So is it possible that um the reason the tuple turned into a vector is because ndims just wasn't defined on the tuple case, but it would be defined on the vector case?
Oh, that's true. Yeah. It may be the like con you were thinking like const propagation was not really working for endims.
No, well,
Because if it was working, then ND would be inferred as one for the tuple case. And then endim's dy can be const prop easily because it's in the type information. So you would know endim's dy minus nd. But if nd is not known, then that n tuple call can return a tuple of any length, which is type unstable.
D is not known. Um,
or not statically, no, because of const failing. I could we don't have to decide this today. I can go back and write some like I'll do some investigation whether this infers or not, and then I'll comment back on the issue. Because I think this will
sure.
require
Okay.
a bit more back and forth. But this is good because we've established like what to look into and what looks good or what seems to be right.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get what you're saying now with the undefined length and tuple,
Hmm.
and that actually wasn't what I was thinking of, but that's a good point.
Oh, okay,
That could be the reason why. I was thinking of something much simpler.
right.
Um, I was just thinking that when MapReduce gets called, um, a change in order to handle the uh scalar case was this call to end dims. Oh, but it's never mind. Never mind. Okay. But I do see what you're saying. Yeah, I guess if you have time to investigate, that would be good, and
Yeah,
then you can comment on the issue.
I will do that. Oh, but I just
I
realized
mean,
what
in
you
short,
mean because sorry, to backtrack a bit, for the scalar case, I think dims would have been the empty tuple before, right? Because it would have been a scalar zero dimensional. It wouldn't have had any dimensions possibly. Or it would have been wrong. Okay. So that the inclusion of that colon makes sense now, based on what you said.
hmm
The ternary with the colon. Yeah. Sorry, go. I cut you off there.
hold on. Yeah, okay. Um, well, the only thing I was gonna say before was if you don't end up having time short of that, I guess um, we can just ask um, why
Yeah.
the change from a tuple to a vector. I think at this point we've gone through the rest of the code where um, we kind of know why all the other changes are there. That's the only one that's somewhat ambiguous.
Okay, sure. I mean, and then we can, if we find time, then we can always elaborate on that. Or if they answer it straight up, then we don't need to bother because they'll have an answer. And we can
Okay, yeah. So
workshop. Yeah.
what
Um,
you're saying is we'll comment now and then let's see what they say.
yeah.
Meanwhile, if you find time. Okay.
Mhm. Great. I think that was it for today. Did you have anything on your side you wanted to bring up, PRs or otherwise?
Um, let me just quickly look at. Oh, yeah. I guess I wanted to bring up just Flux training, fast AI
Yes.
packages in general. I think it's safe to say they are bit rotted at this point.
Yep.
Flux training maybe less so than fast AI. So, yeah, I guess maintenance wise, how do we want to handle this?
That is a very good question.
Flux training is one that I think is broadly useful to have in the ecosystem.
Mhm.
And I would say code organization wise could be restructured, but design wise is reasonably good. That
Definitely.
I think beyond just updating for the latest Flux optimizer type things, it doesn't need major changes. Um, FastAI.jl is pretty complex design. And I feel like the last time I had it all proper in my head was when we had the GSOC students working on adding text and stuff.
Yes.
Um, and even then, I don't think I really had the full picture of how everything worked together. Um, so I would, for me at least, that would be a pretty major time commitment trying to update that code base. And then to the point where like I can maintain it on like a drop-in basis, like I can for like our other packages.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, what do we do with it? Um, Short of archiving it. I don't know if we want to go that far, do we?
Right. I mean, so we have like the GSOC season is coming up. Um,
Mhm.
Normally we have a couple project ideas out there. Like I guess in general, when we have had a concrete project idea that we've put out and gotten applicants for, that's worked out better than cases where um the project, like the applicant defined the project and it was maybe a little less well defined going into it, but we saw the promise of the project, which is why we mentored it.
Yes.
Um, so, um, I mean, I don't know if it's appropriate for GSOC to have a project like this, but one that's just like taking a code base, bringing it up to date, that like no feature additions over the entire summer, but basically just the end goal of GSOC is to get maintainers for various open source projects. And that would be the end goal here too, is that if we can get someone who's um, motivated enough and um, capable enough to handle a task like this in a summer, that they would then become a long-term maintainer of Fast AI.
Mhm. Do you think it
I
would
just
be
don't.
do you think it'd be more helpful to have that for fast AI or for flex training though?
Um, I mean, I feel like if we were to get a student like that, then targeting um, flux training, data augmentation, and maybe even ML utils is all within the scope of bringing fast AI up to speed.
Mhm. I'm wondering because it seems, at least based on our bug reports that we receive, more people are using flex training than are using fast AI. And maybe in terms of this is something where, given limited resources, we should start lower down in the stack. And then once that's established, once we have maintainers for that, then it becomes easier to keep the higher levels up to date as well. Because I think some of the changes issues people have with Fast AI also come from um, stuff that kind of bubbles up from flux training. So the optimizers change, the implicit to explicit parameters change, etc.
Yeah. No, I mean I agree with you that way. Yeah, I guess from my point of view, updating flux training and then updating data augmentation is um not really big enough to be a GSOC project.
That's fair.
I mean,
Yeah.
I guess that was my concern with this proposal just in general is um I don't even know if that this is something that's allowed. Because generally they have to put together, a report. Like what Google considers a good project is one where um, the students can put together reports showing the features that they've added and how they can be used. Um,
Yeah. And that's what made the Fast AI GSOCs pretty straightforward because you were working on one domain area. Like there was like a strict set of component, or there was a pretty clear set of components to have that all fit together rather nicely.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah, here would basically be a list of like errors and then the fixes for them. But that doesn't really make for a great GSOC report.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe, I don't know. This might be too much homework, but we could look at what other ML orgs have done for their GSOCs. Maybe there's some inspiration we can take there. Because I'm sure they have ones where people are working on subsystems of packages that might, and then there might be a way to carve out niches in there where it's like it I agree that like pure maintenance or like bringing code up to speed might be tricky to sell as a coherent GSOC project. But maybe if it's like adding some new subsystem that is not 100% vital to the project working well, but we've wanted for a while, and that at the same time kind of entails bring the rest of the package up to speed again. Uh, I don't know what that would be, but that's something we could think about. Like maybe, I don't know, like hyperparameter logging or like logging in general. I don't know how good our logging is for Flux training right now, but if it's not good, then right. Um,
I
something like
mean,
that. Yeah.
yeah. Well, WandDB, yeah. I mean, I know that was just an example.
Yeah.
Uh, well, what do you think about using Metalhead as our as our I mean, it's not really a Trojan horse, but basically we've talked about having training scripts for the Metalhead models being like basically what Ian has been doing in his PRs.
Yes.
Um, we've talked about this for a while. Um, I think this would be a good project for someone who has basic experience with ML, basic experience with, is competent in Julia and Flux, let's say, um, has trained models before, and is kind of looking to get more experience doing like model debugging.
Hmm.
And like that would be the more researchy aspect of it. And yeah, so the goal would be to set up a training flow that's now part of the Metalhead repo, um, that then we can use as maintainers to track things, perhaps for like benchmarking, maybe on like a monthly basis, because I don't think we'll be able to use CI for it. But like,
Yeah.
um, that like if there was a well put together training flow, I definitely have GPUs spare that I can run something every month or so. Um, like run through a suite, and then the results get pushed up somewhere. So maybe that can be the main goal of the project. And then implicit in that is using Flux training, um, as part of the training script, using the standard data augmentations for like CFAR as part of this training script. And
Yes.
so, and we can be explicit in the project description that bringing Flux training up to speed, bringing data augmentations up to speed, would be good first. This could actually be good first issues for someone looking to work on the project. If they can tackle a couple of these maintenance issues beforehand, then that would make them a good candidate for the larger project.
Yeah, I like that. And then
Okay.
this becomes almost sort of, I don't know where it would fall, either somewhere between the Middlehead Model Zoo and kind of a Middlehead end-to-end benchmark suite, like I think PyTorch has for some of their testing. So somewhere within that range, I guess, where it's like you
Yeah.
have a standardized way to automatically, well, on you have to run it, trigger it manually, but once you trigger it, it automatically runs models and tells you how well they're doing, whether or not they've broken, and how
Right.
fast they are if they work. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I like that.
And you know, if it logs to 1 dB, that could just be an short, instead of having doing something complex like having a benchmarking website and stuff, we could just have these runs get logged to 1 dB and publicly link to that. People can
Yep.
go there.
Can we create an organizational account for FlexML on 1DB?
Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
that's good.
yeah, organizations are a little bit annoying
Mhm.
on 1 dB with like ownership. So I'll have to double check if what because a user has to own an org basically. Some user
I
has to
see.
create an org. Uh, and I don't know if one user can have multiple orgs. I'll have to double check on that.
Okay.
Um, but assuming that one of us can create the org, then yeah, for sure there are org accounts, and there's also I've never used them, but there's apparently a way to take that kind of raw view that I shared with you and Ian and turn it into something that looks like a report. So, um, and then the report is basically what we would link to publicly. People just go there and see like the accuracy curves of all the models for the latest runs or something
Yeah,
like
that
that.
the notebook feature they have is pretty nice. I've seen it being used recently.
Okay, nice.
Okay, great.
Um, yeah, I guess we have time before the GSOC proposal deadlines and stuff, but
Yeah,
yeah, I guess I'll put together what we just discussed and put it on the website at some point.
great. Thanks. Do you know,
All right,
is that happening like in the spring?
the
Is that when we send
proposals.
them out? Yeah. Or when we have to send out our project ideas?
Yeah, sometime in the spring is when the ideas have to be finalized. Um, I guess, yeah, let me just look at the email. Right, org applications are open until Feb 6th. Um,
Okay.
we should email the num focus coordinators, I guess.
Hmm.
That's what we have to do
Got it.
um in order to get in. Yeah, I assume because we're only taking on a single project, it sounds like it doesn't make sense to apply outside of num focus, even though we could.
Yeah, I was thinking I doubt we would have more than a couple. Maybe we want to talk with Julian, um, and Anton before, just to see if there's anything on the like GPU or acceleration related that might pop up, but otherwise, yeah, I agree.
Right. Yeah, so maybe um if you want to message on Zulip, like
Yeah,
start a group message with them,
I will do that.
yeah, it'd be good to just double check.
Sure, I will do that.
Okay, yeah, and once that's all good, I'll take care of emailing the NumFocus people.
Okay, great. I guess we can commit to being part of it without knowing our exact project's idea list, right? But that only has to come in a month or so later.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the actual deadlines are because last time we did it, we in principle missed some deadline that we never got emailed.
Right,
Um, and
unfortunately.
our so yeah, I guess we don't actually need to know our idea list, but there is some deadline, I don't know when it is, where
Okay.
NumFocus projects have to put their idea list on the NumFocus um repo. So that's the PR that came in late last year for us.
Hmm.
And that PR would be the point at which we would have had to already put our idea list on our website by. Otherwise, I don't think there's any deadlines related to ideas. Yeah, so I'll email them anyways without the idea list, and I guess if they ask us for one, then we'll have to come up with it
Yep,
before.
it shouldn't be too
Okay.
bad. Great.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks. I guess see you in 2 weeks. Have a
Yeah,
good weekend.
thanks. This is helpful. You too.